Elena Vasquez looked out the small window of her transport ship as it approached the massive structure floating in space. The Galactic Council station was unlike anything she had ever seen. It looked like a giant crystal that had been carved by the gods themselves. Thousands of lights twinkled across its surface, and ships from dozens of different worlds moved around it like busy insects. She took a deep breath and adjusted her formal diplomatic uniform. After 30 years of trying, humanity had finally been invited to present their case for membership in the Galactic Council. Elena was the first human to ever set foot on the station. The weight of her entire species rested on her shoulders. The docking process took 2 hours. Elena watched as robotic arms guided her small ship into a bay designed for vessels much larger than hers. Everything about this place reminded her that humans were newcomers to the galactic community. They were small, young, and barely noticed by the ancient civilizations that ruled the stars. As Elena stepped off her ship, she was greeted by a tall, blue-skinned alien with 4 arms. This was Ambassador HFY of the Zephyrian Empire, the most powerful species in the Council. His people had been traveling between stars for over 10,000 years when humans were still learning to make fire. "Welcome, human representative," HFY said in perfect English. His voice was cold and formal. "You will be escorted to your quarters. The presentation is scheduled for tomorrow at the 3rd cycle." Elena nodded politely. "Thank you, Ambassador. I look forward to sharing humanity's achievements with the Council." HFY's 4 eyes studied her for a moment. There was something in his gaze that made Elena uncomfortable, but she could not quite identify what it was. "Yes," he said slowly. "We are all very interested to see what your species has to offer." The quarters they gave Elena were small but comfortable. The walls were made of the same crystal material as the rest of the station, and they glowed with a soft, warm light. She spent the evening reviewing her presentation one final time and checking the special device she carried in her diplomatic bag. The device was humanity's greatest secret and their most generous gift. It contained the complete mathematical proof for faster-than-light communication without quantum entanglement. This technology would allow instant communication across the entire galaxy, something that even the advanced Zephyrians had not achieved. Elena believed this gift would prove that humans deserved a place among the stars. What Elena did not know was that hidden inside her neural implant was another piece of technology. It was a quantum transmitter that could send information directly back to Earth instantly. The device had been placed there without her knowledge by Earth security services. If anything went wrong, they would know about it immediately. The next morning, Elena was escorted to the council chambers. The room was enormous, with representatives from over 1,000 different species arranged in circular tiers that rose up like an ancient amphitheater. Elena had studied many of these species, but seeing them all together was overwhelming. There were the insect-like hive minds from the outer rim, the energy beings from the core worlds, and the mechanical races from the industrial sectors. Some looked almost human, while others were so alien that Elena had trouble understanding how they could even exist. All of them watched her as she walked to the center of the chamber. The council speaker was an ancient being called a Valdorian. His people were among the oldest in the galaxy, and they served as neutral moderators for council proceedings. He looked like a giant tree with a face carved into its trunk, and when he spoke, his voice echoed through the chamber like distant thunder. "We gather today to hear the petition of the species known as humans," the speaker announced. "They seek provisional membership in our council and request the rights and protections that such membership provides." Elena stepped forward and activated her presentation device. Holographic images appeared in the air around her, showing Earth and the human colonies that had been established in nearby star systems. She spoke clearly and confidently, explaining humanity's history, their technological achievements, and their desire to join the galactic community. "We come not as conquerors or as beggars," Elena said. "We come as partners. Humanity has always believed that cooperation and shared knowledge make all species stronger. We have brought with us a gift that we hope will demonstrate our commitment to the common good." She activated the device she had brought and uploaded the FTL communication technology to the Council's central database. The mathematical proofs and technical specifications appeared on screens throughout the chamber. There was a buzz of excitement as representatives realized what they were seeing. "This technology will allow instant communication across any distance," Elena explained. No more waiting months or years for messages to travel between star systems. With this, the entire galaxy can be connected in real time. The chamber erupted in discussion. Representatives from dozens of species began talking excitedly among themselves. Elena felt a surge of hope. Surely this gift would convince them that humans belonged among the galactic community. But as the minutes passed, Elena began to notice something troubling. The Zephyrian delegation was not celebrating or discussing the technology. Instead, they were having quiet, intense conversations among themselves. Their body language suggested anger rather than excitement. Ambassador HFY stood and requested permission to speak. The chamber fell silent. While this technology is impressive, he said, we must consider the implications. The humans have developed this in less than a century of space travel. They are advancing too quickly. They are unpredictable and potentially dangerous. Other representatives began to nod in agreement. Elena felt her heart sinking as she realized what was happening. This was not a fair evaluation of humanity's petition. The decision had already been made. Furthermore, HFY continued, their aggressive expansion into multiple star systems shows that they cannot be trusted to respect established boundaries. They are a young species with no understanding of the delicate balance that maintains peace in our galaxy. Elena tried to respond, but the speaker did not give her permission to speak. Instead, he called for a vote. Elena watched in horror as the results appeared on the chamber's main screen. The vote was not even close. Humanity's petition for membership was rejected by an overwhelming majority. But worse was to come. HFY stood again and made another proposal. Given the potential threat posed by this species, I propose that we take decisive action. We should make an example that will discourage other young species from following their path. What are you suggesting? Asked the representative from the Crystalline Collective. Execution of their envoy for crimes against galactic security, HFY replied calmly. And a warning to their homeworld that any further expansion or advanced research will result in the complete sterilization of their planet. Elena felt the blood drain from her face. This could not be happening. She was a diplomatic envoy under the protection of ancient galactic law. But as she looked around the chamber, she saw that many representatives were nodding in agreement. The vote on her execution was even more decisive than the vote on membership. In less than an hour, Elena had gone from hopeful ambassador to condemned criminal. The charges were vague and clearly fabricated, but the result was final. As the security forces moved to arrest her, Elena activated her neural implant with a thought. Everything she had seen and heard was instantly transmitted back to Earth through humanity's experimental quantum network. Her death would not be in vain if Earth knew what had really happened here. The execution was scheduled for the next day and would be broadcast throughout human space as a warning. Elena spent her final night in a small cell, thinking about her family back on Earth and wondering if humanity would survive what was coming. She had no way of knowing that her death would trigger a response that would shake the foundations of galactic civilization. Hidden in her neural implant was not just a transmitter, but an activation code that would unleash something the galaxy had never seen before. As Elena prepared to face her executioners, she whispered a prayer for her species. "Let them remember us as we truly are," she said to the empty cell. "Let them know that humans do not go quietly into the darkness." The next morning, Elena was led to the execution chamber. Representatives from across the galaxy watched as she was strapped to a device that would painlessly end her life. HFY himself read the charges and the sentence. "Let this serve as a warning to all young species," he announced. "The galaxy has order and peace because we maintain discipline. Those who threaten that order will face the consequences." Elena looked directly into the camera that was broadcasting her death to human space. "My name is Elena Vasquez," she said clearly. "I came here in peace and I die for the crime of offering friendship. Remember this day, and remember what we could have been together." The execution device activated and Elena's life ended instantly. Her body was launched into space according to Galactic Council protocol, and the representatives returned to their normal business. They believed they had solved the human problem efficiently and decisively. But in the depths of space, Elena's neural implant continued to transmit. Even in death, she was sending a message that would change everything. The data stream included not just her memories of the trial and execution, but also detailed scans of the Council's military capabilities, political structure, and technological weaknesses. On Earth, the message was received by a small group of scientists and military leaders who had been waiting for this exact scenario. They had hoped it would never be necessary, but they had prepared for the possibility that humanity's peaceful overtures would be rejected with violence. Within minutes of Elena's death, a coded message was sent to every human colony, research station, and exploration vessel in known space. The message was simple but carried enormous weight. Prometheus Protocol is now active. Execute Code Omega. Elena sends her regards. Across human space, people who had been living normal lives as colonists, scientists, and explorers suddenly revealed their true purposes. Hidden shipyards began operating at full capacity. Research stations that appeared to be studying mundane subjects activated secret projects. Mining operations that had been quietly extracting resources for years suddenly showed their true scope. Humanity had been preparing for war from the moment they first detected alien signals. Not because they wanted conflict, but because they understood that the galaxy might not welcome them with open arms. Elena's mission had been their attempt at peace. Her execution was the signal to abandon that hope. The Galactic Council had made a fatal error. They had assumed that humans were like other young species they had encountered, simple, predictable, and easily controlled. They had not bothered to study human history or psychology. If they had, they would have learned that humans were most dangerous when they appeared to be helpless. As news of Elena's execution spread through human space, there was no panic or despair. Instead, there was a cold, focused anger that united the entire species. Every human, from the farmers on distant agricultural worlds to the researchers in the most advanced laboratories, understood that their survival was now at stake. The galaxy was about to learn why humans had named their home planet Earth. Because when humans were threatened, they did not just fight back. They made the very ground tremble beneath their enemies' feet. Elena's death had not ended humanity's story. It had begun the first chapter of a war that would rewrite the laws of reality itself. The broadcast of Elena's execution reached Earth 12 hours after her death. Every human settlement in the solar system received the transmission simultaneously through the Galactic Council's own communication network. The message was clear. Humanity was to remain within their home system, cease all faster-than-light research, and submit to Council oversight. Any violation would result in the complete destruction of Earth. In the underground command center beneath the Swiss Alps, General Sarah Chen watched the execution video for the third time. Her face remained expressionless, but her hands were clenched into fists. Around her, dozens of officers and scientists worked at their stations with quiet intensity. They had all known Elena personally. She had been more than an ambassador. She had been their hope for peaceful contact with the galaxy. Quantum transmission confirmed, reported Dr. Marcus Webb from his station. Elena's neural implant successfully uploaded everything before termination. We have complete intelligence on Council military capabilities, political structure, and technological specifications. General Chen nodded slowly. And the colonies? All stations have confirmed receipt of the activation codes. Prometheus Protocol is now fully operational across human space. Chen turned to address the room. Ladies and gentlemen, as of this moment, humanity is at war. Not a war we wanted, but a war forced upon us by those who chose to murder our ambassador rather than accept our friendship. She paused and looked at each person in the room. Elena died believing in peace. She died hoping that we could find our place among the stars through cooperation and mutual respect. Her death proves that such hopes were naive. The galaxy has shown us what it thinks of humanity. Now we will show the galaxy what humanity thinks of murder. The activation of Prometheus Protocol was the culmination of 50 years of secret preparation. From the moment humanity had detected the first alien radio signals, a small group of visionaries had understood that first contact might not go well. While most of Earth celebrated the possibility of joining a galactic community, these individuals had quietly prepared for the worst-case scenario. Every human colony established outside Earth's solar system had been built with dual purposes. On the surface, they appeared to be simple mining operations, research stations, or agricultural settlements. Below ground, they housed massive industrial complexes, advanced research laboratories, and military installations that had been constructed using automated systems over decades. The asteroid belt contained what appeared to be small mining operations run by private corporations. In reality, these facilities had been building something unprecedented, a fleet of vessels that incorporated technologies far beyond anything publicly known to exist. These ships had been constructed in complete secrecy, using revolutionary materials and propulsion systems developed by humanity's brightest minds. Dr. Webb stood and activated a holographic display that showed human space in 3 dimensions. Red dots appeared throughout the solar system and beyond, marking the locations of hidden facilities that were now revealing their true purposes. Phase 1 is complete, he announced. All hidden installations are now active and operating at full capacity. Our shipyards in the Kuiper Belt have finished construction of the first wave vessels. They're unlike anything the galaxy has ever seen. General Chen studied the display with satisfaction. What about our special project? Dr. Webb smiled grimly. The reality engine is ready for deployment. Elena's intelligence data confirmed our theories about the fundamental weaknesses in Council technology. They've become complacent after millennia of peace. They rely on predictable, standardized solutions to problems. And they have no idea what they're really dealing with, added Dr. Sarah Okafor, the project's lead physicist. Their understanding of physics is advanced but limited. They work within the known laws of the universe. We've learned to work around them. The reality engine was humanity's greatest secret and their most devastating weapon. It was not a traditional weapon at all, but rather a device that could manipulate the fundamental forces of reality itself. The technology had grown out of humanity's research into quantum mechanics and their discovery that the universe operated according to principles similar to computer programming, while other species had developed faster than light, travel and advanced energy weapons. Humans had taken a different path. They had focused on understanding the underlying code that governed reality. After decades of research, they had learned to hack it. Begin Phase 2, General Chen ordered. Send the message to all human settlements. It's time for the galaxy to learn what we're truly capable of. The message that went out to every human colony was simple, but carried enormous significance. It contained detailed instructions for the next phase of operations, and included a special recording that Elena had made before her departure for the Council station. In the recording, Elena appeared calm and confident despite knowing the dangers she faced. My fellow humans, she said, if you are hearing this message, then our hopes for peace have been shattered. The galaxy has chosen to see us as a threat, rather than as potential partners. She paused and looked directly into the camera, but they have made a critical error. They believe that by killing me, they can intimidate our species into submission. They do not understand that humanity's greatest strength has always been our ability to adapt and overcome. They think they have ended our story. Instead, they have given us the motivation to write a new chapter. The recording continued with specific technical instructions that activated systems Elena had helped design years earlier. Every human settlement had been equipped with quantum communication arrays that could transmit instantly across any distance. These arrays now linked every human facility into a single, coordinated network. On the agricultural world of New Eden, colonists who had spent years growing crops suddenly revealed themselves as highly trained engineers and scientists. The farming equipment they had been using was quickly reconfigured into manufacturing systems that began producing advanced technology components. In the asteroid mining station designated as Facility 7, workers who had appeared to be simple miners activated hidden production lines. The asteroids they had been mining were actually construction materials for vessels that defied conventional understanding of physics and engineering. The research station orbiting Jupiter, which had claimed to be studying the planet's atmospheric composition, revealed massive laboratories where teams of scientists had been developing technologies that made the Council's most advanced systems look primitive by comparison, but the most significant revelation was occurring on Mars. The terraforming project that had been slowly making the planet habitable was revealed to be cover for the construction of humanity's most ambitious undertaking, a facility capable of manufacturing reality engines on a massive scale. Dr. Okafor stood in the control room of the Mars facility, watching as automated systems that had been dormant for years came online. Prometheus Base is fully operational, she reported to Earth via quantum communication. We can begin mass production of reality engines within 48 hours. General Chen received the report with satisfaction. Excellent. Begin immediately. How long before the first wave vessels are ready for deployment? 6 months, replied Admiral Jackson Carter, the commander of humanity's secret space fleet. But that's just the beginning. Once we demonstrate what we're capable of, the entire balance of power in the galaxy will shift. The ships being constructed in hidden facilities throughout human space were unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. They incorporated technologies that seemed to violate the laws of physics. These vessels could phase through solid matter, manipulate gravity like a tool, and exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously. The key to these capabilities was humanity's discovery of what they called the Universal Code. After decades of research into quantum mechanics and theoretical physics, human scientists had realized that reality itself operated according to programmable principles. Every particle, every force, every law of physics was part of a vast computational system that could be modified by those who understood its underlying structure. The Galactic Council's technology, while advanced, worked within the traditional understanding of physics. They had developed faster than light travel, powerful energy weapons, and sophisticated artificial intelligence, but they had never questioned the fundamental nature of reality itself. Humans, with their history of hacking and programming, had approached the problem differently. They had treated the universe like a computer system and had learned to reprogram it. The beautiful irony, Dr. Webb explained to the assembled team, is that they gave us the key to defeating them. Elena's neural implant recorded every detail of their technology and military capabilities. We now know exactly how their systems work and, more importantly, how to make them not work. The plan was elegant in its simplicity. Rather than engaging in conventional warfare, humanity would demonstrate technologies that made such warfare obsolete. They would show the galaxy that the old rules no longer applied, and that those who had murdered their ambassador had made a fatal miscalculation. But the plan was about more than revenge. Elena's execution had revealed the true nature of the Galactic Council. They were not the peaceful, cooperative organization they pretended to be. They were an empire built on the suppression of younger species and the maintenance of their own power. We're not just fighting for humanity's survival, General Chen explained to her staff. We're fighting for the freedom of every species in the galaxy. The Council maintains its power by convincing everyone that their way is the only way. We're going to prove them wrong. The quantum communication network allowed human settlements to coordinate their efforts with precision impossible under normal circumstances. Every facility knew exactly what every other facility was doing, and resources could be allocated instantly based on real-time needs. As the preparations continued, human psychologists and sociologists worked to understand the enemy they were facing. Elena's intelligence data included detailed information about the political structure of the Galactic Council and the psychology of its member species. The Zephyrians are the key, reported Dr. Lisa Park, the team's leading expert on alien psychology. They've maintained control for thousands of years by presenting themselves as wise, benevolent leaders. But Elena's data shows that they're terrified of losing their position. They see any rapidly advancing species as a potential threat to their dominance, which explains why they killed Elena rather than accepting humanity into the Council, General Chen observed. They couldn't risk having us discover their weaknesses or challenge their authority. Exactly, and that fear is what we're going to use against them. When we demonstrate our capabilities, their own allies will begin to question whether the Zephyrians are really as powerful as they claim to be. The plan was not to conquer the galaxy, but to liberate it. Humanity would use their advanced technology to break the Council's monopoly on power and give every species the freedom to determine their own destiny. But first, they needed to send a message that the galaxy would never forget. Elena's death would be avenged, and the universe would learn that humanity was not a species to be trifled with. As the months passed and the preparations neared completion, every human in the galaxy knew that they were part of something historic. They were not just building weapons or ships. They were creating the foundation for a new kind of civilization, one based on freedom and cooperation rather than control and oppression. Elena's sacrifice had not been in vain. Her death had united humanity in a way that nothing else could have. Every human, from the youngest child to the oldest scientist, understood that their species' survival depended on the success of their mission. The galaxy had wanted to see what humanity was capable of. They were about to find out. 6 months had passed since Elena's execution, and the Galactic Council had convinced itself that the human problem was solved. Intelligence reports from automated surveillance probes showed that Earth had gone completely silent. No transmissions, no faster-than-light signatures, no colonial expansion. The primitive primates had apparently accepted their place in the galactic order. Ambassador Kethvar stood before the Council's high command, delivering his monthly report on the human situation. The chamber was filled with the most powerful military leaders from across Zephyrian space, and Kethvar took great satisfaction in reporting their success. The execution of the human envoy has had the desired effect, he announced with confidence. Their species has retreated to their home system and ceased all advanced research activities. Our monitoring stations detect no unusual activity from human space. Fleet Admiral Thisara, the Supreme Commander of the Zephyrian military, nodded approvingly. Excellent. This will serve as an example to other young species. The galaxy remains stable and under proper control. What the Zephyrians did not know was that their monitoring stations were detecting exactly what humans wanted them to detect. Every surveillance probe, every long-range sensor, every intelligence-gathering device was being fed carefully crafted false information through humanity's quantum manipulation technology. While the Council saw silence and submission, the reality was completely different. Across human space, the greatest construction project in the species' history was nearing completion. But this construction was taking place in dimensions that Zephyrian sensors could not detect, using technologies that their science could not comprehend. On Mars, Dr. Sarah Okafor stood in the central control room of Prometheus Base, watching as the final reality engine rolled off the production line. The facility had produced over 300 of the devices in 6 months, each one capable of rewriting the laws of physics in a localized area of space. Final batch is complete, she reported to General Chen via quantum communication. All reality engines are tested and ready for deployment. Outstanding work, Sarah, Chen replied from her command center on Earth. Admiral Carter, what's the status of the fleet? Admiral Jackson Carter's voice came through clearly from the hidden shipyard in the Kuiper Belt. All vessels are complete and standing by. The crews have finished their training, and we've run successful tests of all systems. We're ready to execute Phase 3 on your command. The ships that Carter commanded were unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. They looked deceptively simple from the outside, appearing to be standard human vessels with conventional hulls and propulsion systems, but appearances were deceiving. Each ship carried a reality engine that allowed it to manipulate the fundamental forces of the universe. These vessels could phase through solid matter by adjusting their quantum state. They could manipulate gravity to create localized black holes, or alter their own mass to achieve impossible speeds. Most importantly, they could edit the laws of physics in the space around them, making enemy weapons ineffective and enemy defenses useless. The technology had grown out of humanity's unique approach to understanding the universe. While other species had focused on working within the known laws of physics, humans had questioned whether those laws were truly absolute. Their research had revealed that reality operated according to programmable principles, like a vast computer system that could be hacked by those who understood its code. The beautiful thing about the reality engines, Dr. Okafor had explained to the design team, is that they don't break the laws of physics. They simply convince local spacetime that different laws are in effect. As far as the universe is concerned, our ships are operating perfectly normally. The fleet consisted of 200 vessels of various sizes, from small reconnaissance ships to massive carriers that could deploy entire squadrons of fighters. Each ship was crewed by humans who had trained for years in secret, learning to operate technology that seemed like magic even to them. But the ships were only part of humanity's response. The real weapon was the knowledge they had gained from Elena's neural implant. Her death had provided them with complete intelligence on the Council's military capabilities, political structure, and technological weaknesses. The irony is perfect, General Chen had observed during one of their planning sessions. They killed Elena to prevent us from learning their secrets, but her death gave us access to information we never could have obtained through peaceful diplomacy. The Council's technology, while advanced, was predictable and standardized. They had achieved peace through conformity, requiring all member species to use approved technologies and follow established protocols. This standardization made them powerful but also vulnerable to anyone who could think outside their parameters. Human psychologists had spent months analyzing the data from Elena's implant, mapping the political relationships and psychological profiles of key council leaders. What they had discovered was a civilization that had grown complacent through centuries of unchallenged dominance. They haven't faced a real threat in over 2,000 years, reported Dr. Lisa Park, the team's chief xenopsychologist. Their military doctrine is based on overwhelming force and technological superiority. They're completely unprepared for an enemy that operates outside their understanding of physics. The plan that had emerged from months of careful analysis was elegant in its simplicity. Rather than engaging in conventional warfare, humanity would demonstrate technologies that made such warfare obsolete. They would show the galaxy that the old rules no longer applied, but the demonstration would serve multiple purposes. It would announce humanity's survival and capabilities to the galaxy. It would shatter the Council's reputation for invincibility, and most importantly, it would begin the process of liberating other species from the Council's oppressive control. "We're not conquering the galaxy," General Chen had explained to her staff. "We're freeing it. The Council maintains its power by convincing everyone that resistance is futile. We're going to prove them wrong." The target for their first demonstration had been chosen carefully. The Zephyrian homeworld's primary orbital station was the symbol of Council power and the site where Elena had been murdered. It was heavily defended by the most advanced weapons in the galaxy and protected by energy shields that could repel entire fleets. More importantly, it was where Ambassador Kethvar maintained his primary residence when not traveling on Council business. Elena's data had revealed that Kethvar had personally ordered her execution, going beyond even what the Council had authorized. He had made her death personal, and humanity intended to respond in kind. The station itself was a marvel of alien engineering. Built over the course of centuries, it housed over 10 million beings from dozens of different species. It served as the administrative center for the Zephyrian Empire and the command center for their military forces. Its defenses were legendary. Massive energy cannons could destroy approaching ships from millions of kilometers away. Quantum shields could deflect or absorb any known form of energy weapon. Automated defense systems could track and engage thousands of targets simultaneously. But all of these defenses had been designed to counter conventional threats. They had never been tested against an enemy that could rewrite the rules of reality. As the months of preparation came to an end, every human in the galaxy knew that they were part of something historic. Children who had been too young to understand Elena's mission now comprehended the magnitude of what their species was attempting. The quantum communication network allowed every human settlement to participate in the operation, regardless of their location. Scientists on distant research stations contributed calculations. Colonists on agricultural worlds provided logistical support. Even children helped by monitoring communication channels and providing moral support to the crews. "This is about more than revenge," General Chen reminded her people in a final address before the operation began. Elena died believing in the possibility of peace and cooperation among all species. Her murderers proved that such cooperation was impossible under the current system. "We're going to create a new system, one where every species has the freedom to determine its own destiny." The speech was transmitted to every human in the galaxy, and the response was immediate and overwhelming. Messages of support flooded the communication networks. Volunteers offered to join the mission in any capacity possible. The entire species had united behind a single purpose. But even as humanity prepared for their demonstration, they maintained the illusion of defeat and submission. The Council's monitoring stations continued to report no unusual activity from human space. Automated probes detected only the expected level of background radiation and routine communications. The deception was so complete that some Council members began to wonder if they had overreacted to the human threat. Perhaps the primitive species had never been as dangerous as they had feared. Perhaps the execution had been unnecessary. These doubts were exactly what humanity wanted to cultivate. The more relaxed and confident the Council became, the greater the shock would be when humanity revealed their true capabilities. Admiral Carter stood on the bridge of the flagship Elena's Hope, watching as his fleet made final preparations for departure. The ships around him flickered in and out of visible reality as their crews tested the reality engines. To external observers, the fleet would be completely invisible until they chose to reveal themselves. All ships report ready, his communications officer announced. Quantum drives are charged and reality engines are operating at optimal parameters. Carter nodded and opened a channel to the entire fleet. Attention all crews. Today we begin the mission that Elena Vasquez died to make possible. We go not as conquerors but as liberators. We carry with us the hopes of every species that has been oppressed by the Council's tyranny. He paused and looked out at the stars beyond his viewports. Somewhere among those stars was the station where Elena had been murdered, and where her killers believed themselves safe from retribution. Remember that we fight not just for humanity, but for the principle that no species should be forced to submit to the will of another. Today we show the galaxy that the age of the Council's dominance is over. The fleet began to move, slipping through space in ways that conventional physics said were impossible. They traveled not through normal space-time, but through dimensions that existed parallel to reality, following paths that the Council's sensors could not detect. As they approached their target, the crews of the human ships felt the weight of history upon them. They were about to fire the first shots in a war that would determine the future of the galaxy, but they were also about to fulfill a promise made to a woman who had died believing in the possibility of a better future. Elena's execution had been intended to intimidate humanity into submission. Instead, it had given them the motivation and information they needed to challenge the greatest empire in galactic history. The Council was about to learn that killing humanity's envoy had been the greatest mistake in their civilization's long existence. Admiral Jackson Carter stood on the bridge of Elena's Hope as his fleet emerged from the quantum dimensions near the Zephyrian homeworld. The massive orbital station hung before them like a glittering jewel against the backdrop of space, its millions of lights creating patterns that spoke of advanced civilization and immense power. The station was exactly as Elena's neural implant data had described. It was beautiful and terrible at the same time, a monument to the Zephyrian Empire's dominance over the galaxy. Massive defense platforms surrounded it like protective guardians, and energy shields shimmered across its surface like aurora. Target acquired, reported Lieutenant Commander Sarah Kim from the tactical station. All defensive systems are active. They don't know we're here. Carter nodded grimly. The reality engines made his ships invisible to the station's sensors, but that invisibility would end the moment they acted. Begin recording. I want every species in the galaxy to see what happens next. The communication officer activated the recording systems that would broadcast their demonstration throughout galactic space. This message would reach every inhabited world, every space station, every ship in known space. The galaxy was about to witness the dawn of a new age. This is Admiral Jackson Carter of the Human Liberation Fleet, he began, speaking to the recording devices. 6 months ago, the Galactic Council murdered our ambassador, Elena Vasquez, for the crime of offering friendship and cooperation. They believed her death would intimidate us into submission. They were wrong. He gestured toward the magnificent station before them. What you are about to see is humanity's response to those who choose murder over diplomacy. We do not come as conquerors. We come as liberators to free the galaxy from those who rule through fear and oppression. The plan was elegant in its simplicity. They would not destroy the station with conventional weapons, which would result in massive loss of life and make them no better than their enemies. Instead, they would demonstrate a technology that made such destruction unnecessary. Dr. Okafor, are you ready? Carter asked through the quantum communication link. From her position aboard the science vessel, Prometheus, Dr. Sarah Okafor confirmed her readiness. Reality engine is charged and calibrated. We can execute the translation on your command. The translation was humanity's most profound technological achievement. Rather than destroying matter, they had learned to convince the universe that certain objects existed in different dimensional states. The orbital station would not be destroyed. It would simply cease to exist in normal space-time. Execute, Carter ordered. The reality engine aboard Prometheus activated with a sound like distant thunder. Space itself seemed to ripple around the orbital station, as the fundamental laws of physics were gently rewritten in that small region of the universe. The station did not explode. It did not burn or break apart. One moment it was there, a massive structure housing 10 million beings. The next moment it simply was not. The defense platforms around the station fired frantically at targets they could not see or understand. Their energy beams passed harmlessly through the space where human ships existed in parallel dimensions. The quantum shields that had protected the station for centuries were useless against an attack that had not technically occurred. Translation complete, Dr. Okafor reported. The station has been successfully moved to Dimension 7. All life signs are stable. They're alive and unharmed, just existing in a parallel reality. Carter allowed himself a small smile. The technology was so advanced that it seemed like magic, but it was actually the most humane weapon ever devised. The beings on the station were not dead. They were simply elsewhere, existing in a dimension where time moved differently and where they could survive indefinitely until humanity chose to return them to normal space. But the demonstration was far from over. Intelligence data indicated that the Zephyrian High Command would respond to the loss of their orbital station by sending their most powerful fleet to Earth. That fleet needed to be neutralized before it could threaten human worlds. Phase 2 is go, Carter announced to his fleet. All ships, prepare for dimensional jump to Zephyrian Fleet Assembly Point Gamma. The human ship slipped back into the quantum dimensions, traveling instantly across hundreds of light years to arrive at a massive space dock where the Zephyrian Empire's most powerful warships were stationed. These were not the simple patrol vessels that policed the trade routes. These were the dreadnoughts and battle cruisers that had conquered entire star systems. Fleet. Admiral Thysera was aboard her flagship, Eternal Dominion, when the human ships materialized around the fleet assembly point. The massive Zephyrian commander had been preparing to lead a punitive expedition to human space when reports arrived that the primary orbital station had simply vanished. Report, she demanded from her bridge crew. What is the tactical situation? Unknown vessels appearing throughout the assembly area, replied her sensor operator, his voice tight with confusion. They're not matching any known ship configurations. And Admiral, their energy signatures are impossible. Thysera watched her displays with growing alarm as human ships appeared to phase in and out of reality around her fleet. These vessels moved in ways that violated every law of physics she understood. They seemed to be existing in multiple dimensions simultaneously. Open communication channels, Carter ordered from his position near the Zephyrian fleet. It's time for Admiral Thysera to understand what she's really facing. The communication reached every ship in the Zephyrian fleet simultaneously. Carter's image appeared on their screens, and his voice carried the quiet confidence of someone who held absolute power. Admiral Thysera, he began, I am Admiral Jackson Carter of the Human Liberation Fleet. Your empire murdered our ambassador and threatened to destroy our homeworld. We are here to demonstrate why that was a mistake. Thysera activated her own communication system, her forearms moving with angry precision. Human vessels, you are in violation of Galactic Council space. Surrender immediately or face the consequences. Carter's expression did not change. The Galactic Council's authority ends today. Your technology cannot harm us. Your weapons cannot touch us. Your shields cannot protect you. Would you like a demonstration? Before Thysera could respond, one of her battle cruisers simply vanished. Like the orbital station, it was there one moment and gone the next, translated to a parallel dimension where it would remain until humanity chose to return it. The crew of that vessel is alive and unharmed, Carter explained calmly. They exist in a place where time moves differently, where they can survive indefinitely. Unlike your empire, we do not solve problems through murder. Another ship disappeared, then another. The Zephyrian fleet, which had been moments away from departing to destroy Earth, found itself helpless against an enemy that operated beyond their understanding of reality. This is impossible, Thysera whispered, watching her mighty fleet disappear ship by ship. No species possesses such technology. Your mistake was assuming that all species think like yours, Carter replied. You developed advanced weapons and faster-than-light travel, but you never questioned the fundamental nature of reality itself. We learned to hack the universe. The demonstration continued until only Thysera's flagship remained. Carter could have removed it as well, but he had a different purpose for the Zephyrian admiral. You will return to the council, he told her. You will tell them exactly what you have seen here. You will explain that humanity possesses technology beyond their comprehension, and that the age of their dominance is over. Thysera's voice was barely controlled. The council will not bow to threats from primitives. We're not making threats, Carter replied. We're stating facts. Elena Vasquez came to your people in peace, offering cooperation and friendship. You murdered her for it. Now you face the consequences of that choice. The human fleet began to fade back into the quantum dimensions, but Carter's final message remained clear. Tell the Council that they have 7 days to release all species currently under their forced authority. Tell them that any world that wishes to leave their empire will be free to do so, and tell them that if they attempt to use violence to maintain their control, they will face the same fate as your fleet. As the human ships disappeared, Thaisara was left alone in space with the wreckage of her empire's reputation. The most powerful fleet in galactic history had been neutralized without a single shot being fired in conventional terms. But the demonstration was being broadcast throughout galactic space, and the reaction was immediate. On thousands of worlds, beings who had lived under Council authority for generations began to understand that liberation might be possible. The Crystalline Collective, an ancient species that had been forced into Council membership centuries earlier, was among the first to act. Their quantum communication networks lit up with messages of hope and defiance as they began to organize resistance movements. On the industrial worlds of the Mechanical Union, robotic beings who had been treated as property rather than citizens began to assert their rights. They had been created by the Council to serve as laborers, but they possessed full consciousness and had always dreamed of freedom. Even within the Council's own member species, there were those who had grown tired of the Empire's authoritarian rule. The demonstration had shown them that the Zephyrians were not invincible, and that resistance was not futile. But perhaps the most significant reaction came from Elena's own family on Earth. Her sister Maria, who had watched the execution broadcast 6 months earlier, now saw her death transformed into something that would reshape the galaxy. Elena always believed that understanding and cooperation were stronger than fear and violence, Maria said in an interview that was broadcast throughout human space. She died for that belief, but her death has given birth to something greater than she could have imagined. Dr. Okafor, monitoring the galactic communication networks from aboard Prometheus, reported a flood of messages from species across the galaxy. Admiral, we're receiving thousands of requests for assistance. Entire star systems are declaring independence from the Council. Carter nodded with satisfaction. The demonstration had achieved exactly what they had hoped. Begin Phase 3. We're going to give every species in the galaxy the same choice Elena tried to offer the Council. They can choose cooperation and freedom, or they can choose to stand with tyranny. But even as humanity celebrated their initial success, they knew the real challenge was just beginning. The Council would not give up their power easily, and there were species in the galaxy who had benefited from the current system and would fight to preserve it. The war for galactic freedom had begun, and it would be fought not with conventional weapons but with ideas, technology, and the simple principle that Elena had died defending, that all intelligent beings deserved the right to determine their own destiny. As the human fleet prepared for the next phase of their mission, they carried with them the hope of billions of beings across the galaxy. Elena's death had become the catalyst for the greatest liberation movement in galactic history. The universe was about to discover that when humans said they came in peace, they meant it. But when that peace was rejected through violence, they had the power to reshape reality itself. The emergency session of the Galactic Council convened 3 days after the disappearance of the Zephyrian orbital station and fleet. The great chamber that had once buzzed with confident discussion now filled with fearful whispers and angry accusations. Representatives from over 1,000 species tried to understand how their seemingly invincible empire had been humbled by a species they had dismissed as primitive. Ambassador Kethavar stood before the assembly, his forearms trembling slightly as he delivered Fleet Admiral Thaisara's report. The proud Zephyrian who had ordered Elena's execution now looked diminished and uncertain. The human vessels demonstrated technology that defies our understanding of physics, he reported, his voice lacking its usual confidence. They exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously and can manipulate the fundamental forces of reality. Our most advanced weapons and defenses were completely ineffective. The Council speaker, the ancient Valdorian whose tree-like form had presided over galactic affairs for millennia, leaned forward with concern. Are you suggesting that this primitive species has somehow surpassed our technological capabilities? I am suggesting that they have developed an entirely different approach to technology, Kethavar replied. They do not work within the laws of physics as we understand them. They have learned to rewrite those laws. The chamber erupted in discussion as representatives struggled to comprehend what they were hearing. Many species had developed advanced technologies over their long histories, but none had ever claimed the ability to manipulate reality itself. What the council members did not know was that their discussion was being monitored by human agents who had infiltrated the station using quantum phase technology. Every word, every plan, every secret was being transmitted back to Earth in real time. General Sarah Chen watched the proceedings from her command center beneath the Swiss Alps, and she could not help but feel a sense of ironic satisfaction. The same chamber where Elena had been condemned to death was now filled with beings who feared for their own survival. "They're starting to understand," she observed to her staff. "For the first time in thousands of years, the Council faces an enemy they cannot simply overwhelm with superior force." Dr. Marcus Webb nodded from his monitoring station. The quantum surveillance network is picking up increased communication activity throughout Council space. Many member species are beginning to question whether continued loyalty to the Empire is worth the risk. This was exactly what humanity had hoped to achieve. The demonstration of superior technology was not meant to terrify the galaxy into submission. It was meant to show oppressed species that liberation was possible and to make Council loyalists question whether they were backing the winning side. But the most significant development was occurring on thousands of worlds throughout galactic space. The broadcast of humanity's demonstration had reached every inhabited planet, and the reaction was immediate and overwhelming. On the mining world of Kepler 438b, the hive mind workers who had labored for centuries under Council authority suddenly stopped work and began demanding basic rights. Their collective consciousness, which had been suppressed by Council neural dampeners, was reasserting itself with the knowledge that resistance was now possible. The energy beings of the luminous sector, who had been forced to provide power for Council installations, began withdrawing their cooperation. Their leaders sent messages to the human fleet, requesting protection from inevitable Council retaliation. Even more surprisingly, some species that had been loyal Council members for generations began reconsidering their allegiances. The mechanical races of the industrial zones, who had been created as servants but had developed full consciousness over time, started organizing independence movements. Admiral Carter received these reports aboard Elena's Hope as his fleet moved through quantum space toward their next target. The human vessels were now operating openly throughout galactic space, no longer hiding their presence from Council sensors. "Admiral," reported his communications officer, "we're receiving over 10,000 requests for assistance from various species and worlds. The independence movements are spreading faster than we anticipated." Carter studied the tactical displays showing the galaxy-wide situation. Red markers indicated Council military installations and loyal worlds. Green markers showed systems that had declared independence or requested human protection. The green markers were multiplying rapidly. "Dr. Okafor," he called through the quantum communication link, "what's the status of our reality engine production?" From her laboratory aboard Prometheus, Dr. Okafor provided an encouraging update. "We've completed Phase 1 deployment. Every human settlement now has at least one operational reality engine. Production facilities on Mars and the asteroid bases are working at maximum capacity. But the most remarkable development was occurring on Earth itself. The planet's population had united behind the liberation effort in ways that surprised even humanity's leaders. Every person on Earth, from small children to elderly scientists, was contributing to the cause in whatever way they could. Schools had been converted into training centers where young humans learned to operate quantum communication systems. Factories that had once produced consumer goods now manufactured components for reality engines. Even artists and writers were contributing by creating propaganda materials that explained humanity's mission to other species. The transformation was so complete that visitors to Earth would not have recognized it as the same planet where Elena had begun her diplomatic mission less than a year earlier. Humanity had evolved from a species seeking acceptance into a species leading a galactic revolution, but the Council was not prepared to surrender without a fight. Ambassador Kethvar had convinced the Assembly to authorize a desperate gambit, the activation of ancient weapons that had been sealed away for thousands of years. The Valdorian archives contain references to pre-Council civilizations that possessed reality-manipulating technology, he explained. to the emergency military session. Those civilizations were destroyed by weapons specifically designed to counter such abilities. Fleet Admiral Thisara, her pride still wounded from the humiliation of losing her entire fleet, supported the proposal enthusiastically. If we cannot defeat them with conventional means, we must use unconventional ones. The survival of our civilization depends on stopping these humans before their revolution spreads further. The ancient weapons they activated were relics from the galaxy's darkest period, when species had fought wars that nearly destroyed entire star systems. The Council's predecessors had sealed these weapons away, recognizing that their use would violate every principle of civilized warfare. But desperation made previously unthinkable actions seem reasonable. The Council authorized the deployment of quantum viruses designed to corrupt reality-manipulating technology, dimensional mines that could collapse entire sections of space-time, and weapons that attacked the fundamental structure of matter itself. The Human Quantum Surveillance Network detected these preparations immediately. Within hours of the Council's decision, every human vessel and installation knew about the ancient weapons and had begun developing countermeasures. "They're more desperate than we anticipated," General Chen observed as she reviewed the intelligence reports. "They're willing to risk destroying the galaxy rather than lose their power." Dr. Okafor coordinated with research teams throughout human space to analyze the ancient weapons and develop appropriate responses. What they discovered was both fascinating and disturbing. These weapons are designed to exploit weaknesses in early reality manipulation technology, she explained to the emergency response team. But our reality engines operate on completely different principles. Their ancient countermeasures are actually ineffective against our systems. More importantly, the Council's decision to use such dangerous weapons had provided humanity with a powerful propaganda tool. The same species that had condemned Elena for offering peaceful cooperation were now willing to risk galactic annihilation to maintain their power. Admiral Carter used this information to maximum effect. In his next broadcast to the galaxy, "Citizens of all worlds," he began, speaking to an audience of trillions of beings, "the Galactic Council has authorized the use of weapons that could destroy entire star systems. They would rather see the galaxy burn than allow you to choose your own destiny." The reaction was immediate and decisive. Even species that had remained loyal to the Council began to reconsider their positions. The knowledge that their own leaders were willing to use planet-killing weapons against their own citizens shattered the last remnants of Council legitimacy. The Crystalline Collective formally declared independence and requested human protection. The energy beings of the luminous sector followed suit, cutting off power to dozens of Council installations. Even some Zephyrian colonies began questioning their loyalty to the Empire. But humanity's response to the Council's desperation was not military escalation. Instead, they chose to demonstrate the constructive potential of their technology. Reality engines that could remove orbital stations from normal space could also create habitable worlds from lifeless rocks. The first demonstration took place in the neutral zone, a region of space that had been devastated by ancient wars and left uninhabitable for millennia. Human vessels arrived at a dead system and began the most ambitious terraforming project in galactic history. Using reality engines to manipulate fundamental forces, they convinced barren planets that they possessed atmospheres, oceans, and ecosystems. What should have taken thousands of years of careful environmental engineering was accomplished in days through quantum manipulation of reality itself. "This is what we offer the galaxy," Admiral Carter announced as images of the transformed world spread throughout galactic space. Not conquest or destruction, but the power to create new homes, new possibilities, new futures for every species. The demonstration had exactly the intended effect. Species that had been hesitant to abandon the Council now saw concrete evidence of what cooperation with humanity could accomplish. The promise of new worlds and unlimited resources proved more compelling than threats of retaliation. Within weeks, the Council's authority had collapsed across vast regions of galactic space. Member species declared independence in unprecedented numbers, and many actively requested human assistance in establishing new governments based on cooperation rather than domination. The ancient weapons that the Council had activated proved useless against enemies who existed primarily in parallel dimensions. When the weapons were fired, they found no targets to destroy. The human fleet had evolved beyond the reach of conventional physics-based attacks. But humanity's ultimate victory came not through superior firepower, but through the fulfillment of Elena's original vision. The technology they shared with liberated species was not kept secret or used as a tool of control. Instead, they began teaching other species to understand and use reality manipulation technology themselves. Dr. Okafor established the Elena Vasquez Institute for Universal Physics on the transformed world of New Hope, the first planet created through quantum terraforming. Scientists from dozens of species came to learn the principles of reality manipulation and to develop their own applications of the technology. Elena believed that knowledge shared freely would benefit all species. Dr. Okafor explained to the Institute's first class of students. She died for that belief, but her death has made it possible for us to create the kind of galaxy she envisioned. The Galactic Council, reduced to controlling only a handful of loyal systems, finally agreed to negotiate. The peace talks were held on New Hope, in a conference center that existed simultaneously in multiple dimensions to accommodate beings from various realities. Ambassador Kethvar, humbled by the complete collapse of everything he had worked to maintain, sat across from Maria Vasquez, Elena's sister, who had become humanity's chief diplomat. The irony was not lost on either of them. "Your sister was an idealist," Kethvar said quietly during a break in the negotiations. "I thought her vision of galactic cooperation was naive." Maria studied the alien who had ordered her sister's execution. Elena wasn't naive. She understood that cooperation required trust and that trust required risk. You chose fear instead of courage, and your empire paid the price. The final agreement established a new galactic organization based on voluntary cooperation rather than imposed authority. Every species was free to develop its own government, pursue its own interests, and form alliances based on mutual benefit rather than coercion. Most importantly, the treaty included provisions for sharing reality manipulation technology with any species that requested it. The era of technological monopolies and enforced backwardness was over. Every civilization would have the tools to shape their own destiny. As the signing ceremony concluded, a holographic image of Elena appeared above the conference table. It was the final message she had recorded before her departure for the council station, a message that had been preserved and shared throughout the galaxy. "I believe in a future where all species can work together as equals," Elena's image said to the assembled representatives. "I believe in a galaxy where knowledge is shared freely, and where every being has the right to determine their own path among the stars. If I do not return from this mission, I hope that my sacrifice will help bring about that future." The chamber fell silent as beings from across the galaxy contemplated how Elena's death had indeed brought about the future she had envisioned. Her execution, intended to intimidate humanity into submission, had instead provided the catalyst for the greatest liberation movement in galactic history. Years later, when historians studied the transformation of galactic civilization, they would mark Elena's execution as the moment when the old age ended and the new age began. The species that had been dismissed as primitive primates had given the galaxy the ultimate gift, the power to rewrite reality itself. And at the center of every reality engine, in quantum script too small to see with conventional instruments, was inscribed a simple message: "Elena sends her regards." The galaxy had executed humanity's envoy. In response, humanity had executed the ultimate code, not just the technology to manipulate reality, but the social and political programs that would reshape civilization itself. Elena's vision of universal cooperation had become the foundation for a new kind of galactic society, one built on freedom rather than fear. The universe would never be the same,